Hi, a question I get from time to time is, do I even need a yield team if I'm a digital media company? The question is usually in the context of, so-and-so company doesn't have a yield team and they seem to be doing great. And the example will be a company like Facebook or Meta, who traditionally doesn't have a yield team, although interestingly now does have a team with people who have titles like Monetization. So I'm going to approach the question in two different ways. The first is to think about the types of things that a traditional yield team does and ask yourself, could they be done by a different group in a different company, or whether they even need to be done at all. So firstly, if you have a managed sales team, you need someone to create a rate card, and usually that would be a pricing and yield team. They would create and update that rate card, and conceivably the rate card wouldn't need to be created by a yield team. It could be created by finance or by sales or by product management. Also, if you're working with a managed sales team, there'll be exception requests. Somebody needs to evaluate those requests and approve them. And again, if you have a yield team, that team is going to do it. But potentially it could be done by a finance or sales or product organization. I would caution, however, that the teams that I just mentioned, if they were to do it, it would either be tangential to their regular responsibilities or they might do it poorly. If you have guaranteed delivery, you will need someone to forecast inventory availability and work out what to do if you have under delivery. Potentially, this could be your ad ops team. Now let's consider the example where if you have no sales team, but instead only have programmatic partners. Conceivably, if you don't have a yield team, you could have your business development do the deal and then work with the ad operations team to set up that deal, and then either set it and forget it, or have ad ops or the product organization manage the settings and over time. If you are a publisher and have a publisher web page or different apps, the design could and probably should be done by product managers. But they are likely to turn to somebody else for support around the estimates of how the financials would do and how best to monetize that app or web page. Maybe they turn to the yield team, or if there is no yield team, they might turn to operations finance or try to build the capabilities themselves in their group. If you're running an ad network, you need to ensure that your monetization is good and the margin is consistent. You need to be monitoring your supply and your demand. And again, that would be an area where traditionally you would turn to a yield management team to help, but you could potentially turn to an ad operations team to get that done. So in summary, there are tons of different activities that could get done by the yield team, and almost every other one of them could get done by a different team. In other words, you can get away with having no yield team if you only check a few of the boxes that I have mentioned already. However, if you are checking the box on more than one or two of those activities, then you're quickly going to find that you're going to need some centralized team to manage many of these functions. That team is going to play both a coordination role and a leadership role in driving the economics of the business. And you may call that team a yield team, or you may call it monetization, or you may call it something else. So to recap, from approach one that I'm going to call bottoms up, look at all your functions and think about who's best positioned to manage that function. It's a long name. The answer is you can get away with no yield team, but you're going to find that you've built many of the components of a yield team, and that without formally endorsing or anointing it, that you may lack the coordination that you would otherwise have if you had a yield team. The second way to approach this problem is to step back and ask yourselves, who is responsible for matching supply and demand in my organization? And approach two, then I'm going to call top-down supply and demand matching. A company like Facebook or any company that owns the whole ad stack end to end and owns the relationship with their advertisers is extremely rare. Very few companies have the resources and the scale to have a direct relationship with their customers. Meta and a number of the other large tech companies also have a unique organizing concept, which is that their product management organization is the leading voice and decision maker in a lot of the supply-demand matching. They're the ones who are ultimately responsible for ensuring that there are systems in place for connecting all their advertisers to all their inventory in an appropriate way. In other words, matching the supply and the demand. In most companies, there is a more fragmented ad tech stack. There are different intermediaries that need to be considered. And there is no one group responsible for matching supply and demand. In the absence of a good yield management team, it will get done. If it gets done at all, it'll get done badly. Now, I want to be careful and point out that I deliberately use the phrase matching supply and demand. If I had said simply who is responsible for demand generation and creation, many people will put up their hand and assert that they are responsible. That'll include people like the head of sales, the chief revenue officer. Lots of people love to own the customer relationship and point to the revenue that they are generating as a result. On the other hand, if I said who is responsible for supply creation in a digital publisher, there are many people who would put up their hands. That includes the general manager of each property, the various chief product managers, etc. The challenge is that in the absence of a coordinating function, someone will feel that the system is broken, probably correctly. Common gripes from the demand side will include assertions that the publishers don't really understand what the advertisers want and are creating all of the wrong type of ad experiences. On the other side, particularly in an environment where a company owns a lot of digital assets, either different web properties or different apps, you will have supply-side property owners who feel like they aren't getting their fair share of demand from the sales team, and they will make the case that they need their own supply team, their own sales team, I should say. This in turn can lead to further fragmentation and dysfunction. In their frustration about trying to make this system work, you will hear some people say, "This is a mess. Let's just put everything on a common auction and let the markets decide." Rarely is that going to lead to good outcomes. In short, you can get away without a yield team, but you better be really clear as to who is actively managing supply and demand and creating the rules and processes for effective optimization. In most organizations, there is really nobody playing this role. So the answer to approach number 2 to answering the question of do you need a yield team is yeah, you can get away without a centralized yield team, but you're going to be suboptimal in your monetization efforts. Thanks for watching. Please subscribe and like.